Welcome to the Warrior Cast, for teens by teens. Do you want to change the world? Don't wait. You're never too young to make a difference. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Warrior Cast. Today I'm here with my friend Emmaline Hart, and our topic today is doing hard things as a young person. Welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Emmaline, but most people call me Emma. I kind of prefer that name. I am 16 years old, and I have been writing for as long as I can remember. I am also training to be an ICF certified coach. That's life coach type stuff. And my passion is for uprooting, inspiring, and sending out the younger generation. I believe that culture has placed young adults under low expectations that take a little energy to meet. And by obediently following those low expectations, we fall short of what God has called us to do.
So what do you believe God has called us to do?
Yeah, so the Bible has a few verses on this that I picked up and I really like. 2 Timothy 2:20-22 says, "Flee from youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace." I don't think it's saying here to skip childhood or grow up too fast, but I do interpret it as to learn from mistakes that you make and to stay in a growing stage and not stick in the irresponsible stage of life. Micah 6:8 says, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God?" And Philippians is my favorite, says, Philippians 2:5 commands us, "Work towards being like his perfect son, having his attitude." And when I read this verse, I thought, well, the word work is in there. And it kind of gave me an image of putting an effort towards growing closer to Jesus. It also says to have his attitude. So Jesus was never a lazy person. Like when he was 12, he was in the temple learning from teachers. But not only learning, he was learning to apply his knowledge of scripture so he could change the world forever. And there were people God chose to do great work that others would have seen as too young and unexperienced. King Josiah reigned over Judah when he was 8. David killed Goliath when he was a teenager. Jeremiah was a teen prophet, and God even told him not to doubt himself because he was young. So, what do I believe God has called teenagers to do? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. We're called to go into the world, share the gospel, regardless of our age, culture, and background.
So how do you think that we can obey the call, and is it realistic to teenagers who are constrained by lack of resources, schoolwork, like all these things that are like holding us down in our culture right now?
Yeah, so I think this culture has truly shaped us, our generation, and the next generation in a way that's so different from the challenges that the previous generations have faced. Like, technology is insane. It's so easy to get lazy. It's so easy to mold into that lifestyle. But it is realistic because now we have more resources than we ever have. We have more opportunities, even though it might seem like it's the easier route is to not use those resources and to get lazy because things are easier now. But God has given us each a gift or a skill. Romans 12:4-8 says, "We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us." And I think that's a key point in this is God has given us gifts specifically to us, to each individual person. And we can use those gifts especially better now because of technology, because of the culture that we're in. And it's even more surprising to people because we are young and they have this idea of what a teenager is. A teenager, goes out as soon as they can drive and does drugs and all that kind of stuff. Like, that is the idea of what a teenager does. But like in 1 Corinthians 12:4-6, it says, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And 1 Peter 4:10-11 says, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. So God has provided us what we need to share the gospel. I think we get bogged down by the idea that to share the gospel, we have to preach on stage, which is another pit that I think we can fall through, is either like being lazy or thinking that our gifts that God has given us won't work because we're not good at public speaking, and that's the only thing that really seems like it gets the gospel out to people. But sharing the gospel can look like baking cookies for a neighbor if you're really good at baking, talking to someone who looks lonely, or drawing the beauty of God's creation and sharing it with others.
So, if God commands us to use our gifts and He's given us what we need to share the gospel, why do you think that we don't pursue that?
Well, it is hard, and it's a lot easier to be lazy. As a personal example that's very recent, I am usually good about taking on challenges that I've signed up for. I sign up for a lot of things that challenge what I'm used to doing, but preparing to be on this podcast episode was a lot more of a struggle than I expected, and it took a lot to just make myself sit down and get my ideas on paper because I was so held back by the fears I have because I signed up for this. And then I realized I'm really scared when it comes to public speaking and sharing my words, the writing that I've written down and the ideas that I have. And so I had to really overcome that this time, and it was difficult. But God has given us the ability to overcome any challenge. So it is a lot easier to slide into that pattern of daily life because it's not too scary. And it's what society expects of us. The culture expects us to let technology and how easy our lives are right now to keep us down and not motivate us. So we're not usually expected to use our God-given gifts to change the world, especially at a younger age. But what we have to realize is that by not using the precious time of not being an adult, but having the resources to do adult things, we're failing ourselves, the people around us, and God.
So, how do you think that as a young person we can use our gifts in the best way as to not fail, ourselves and fail others?
Well, like I was saying a little bit, we were talking about how there's that period between childhood and adulthood that is a time of learning, practicing, growing, finding reasonable expectations, and we need to prepare ourselves for the real world. Otherwise, we will move out, wake up, everyone will expect us to have a job, be successful, and we won't be ready at all. And during those teen years, if we're not striving towards something, life can kind of feel pointless. You might not have something to work towards, so your only expectations would be to get good grades or to keep up with school, to send something into a college maybe. And I from my experience, that can lead to things like depression and anxiety because you don't have a direction and it doesn't feel like there's a reason to get up every day. And so when we don't have a purpose and we don't have a reason, things can go south for our mental, physical, and emotional states. We can fail ourselves by not finding a purpose and a passion. I have a story from the book The Young Men We Need by Brant Hansen that shows how we fail ourselves and others when we don't train to use our gifts in the younger years. So I can open up the book if my hand stops shaking. All right, I'll read the chapter. So, this brings us to the Jake question. It's a fun one to bat around with people. Let's say Jake is a relatively physically healthy 20-year-old. He lives with his parents and stays inside almost all day, every day. He spends his time playing video games and watching porn while his parents provide meals and snacks. He's content. He'd say he's happy with his life. Is this okay? Is there anything really wrong with this? He's happy. He's not bothering or harming anyone. Is there actually a problem? For some, the answer will be obvious. No. There really isn't a problem at all, because if he's hurting anyone else and he's happy, what does it matter? But that reasoning doesn't quite work because it ignores this fact. Jake is actually harming someone. He's harming himself and others by not being who he was created to be. The world needs Jake. There are real humans outside Jake's window who will suffer because he isn't who we need him to be. There are perhaps dozens of people, maybe thousands, whose lives will be worse because Jake is a no-show. Also, he may currently be happy, but who says that mere happiness is the end goal? After all, it can and will be fleeting. Maybe we should pursue something bigger and richer and longer lasting than that. Now, Jake may not look like a typical hero, but he could decide to be one. Like all of us, he has been given a measure of strength and intelligence and creativity. God has given him what he needs to do in order to get things done in the world. We'll talk more about those things, but these are worth thinking about now. While Jake accomplishes fake tasks in fake worlds, there are things that need to be done in the real world. While he entertains himself with images of women, there are real women yearning for actual grown-up men. While his games and entertainment may center on fake storylines of fighting injustice, there are real people who need protection. Everything Jake has is given to him for a reason, including his freedom. It really is up to him whether he chooses life through the real or death through the fake. He's like all of us. This is where we are right now. This Jake, like the original Adam, was created to be a keeper of the garden, a protector and defender. He was created to bring order from chaos. He was created to make things and people around him thrive and grow in beauty and strength. But he's AWOL. It's simply not enough to say about your life, I didn't bother anyone. You were created to take responsibility. You will thrive if you grow into that purpose. In fact, I'd argue this. If a grown-up male's life is all about entertainment options, using women for sexual pleasure, smoking weed, and modifying his car, he's not a man. He's stuck in boredom. God loves him dearly, yes, and there are people rooting for him, sure, but he's not the man the world needs him to be. Not yet. Wow, do we need him to grow up. Some boys start becoming men early. Some are told when they're little that they have a role. I remember when my son was picking on his little sister. Justice was 9 and Julia was 6. I told him, Justice, you're supposed to be her protector. Instead, you're being a threat. You're betraying your job. Even at that age, he understood this very clearly and he took it to heart. Honestly, I don't remember him ever picking on his sister again. Young kids can understand this role. It's sad that they and even adult men don't often hear it. We all very much want mission and purpose, whether we realize it or not. We become distorted without them. We get caught up more easily on the things that make us shrink and wither. The great thing is that God will use any of us who are willing to show up. Jake, we need you out here. And the story is a little more centered towards young men, but I think that part about having a role is really important. And we can fail ourselves and others by hiding away from responsibility in that role. That story hit me hard when I first read it. I was definitely a Jake kind of person for a while, and I was younger than the age I am now, but I didn't have the mindset that my actions now would affect myself in the future and others and God's plans in the future.
Yeah, that's really deep. So, how do you think we figure out what gifts God has given us?
I like this part. So, your gift is usually something that you enjoy doing. Um, it's something that you're passionate about, a skill that fills you with fire. For me, that fiery passion is for writing, especially, and coaching. But it could be anything from a sport, a creative or technical skill like math, which I'm terrible at, or it could be a virtue you have, like kindness. So sometimes, something to keep in mind is that that passion might not end up being your job or your way of showing the gospel, but the thing that you're doing right now, if it's like a sport or baking, it's still building up other skills in you that might be what God needs you to be able to spread the gospel and share whatever your role is. So, um, maybe your passion right now is playing football. You are learning perseverance, you're getting strong, and you're learning how to work on a team. You can use all of those skills right now to serve God and others, and you will need those skills in the future to serve God and others. So, if you feel as though you don't really have a burning up passion for anything, then it's probably time for you to actually try something new and to learn something. Because everyone has a gift, and yours could be a little hidden, or maybe it's not something you've really thought about before. So take time to really consider what strength God might have given you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I definitely like what you said about even though you might not end up being a full time football player, might not end up being a full time baker, those skills that you learn will carry over into whatever you do. And I think our mutual mentor, Brett Harris, has talked a lot about that type of thing in writing because that's what he teaches. Uh, and yeah, that's a really good point. So, what are some first steps that listeners can take to really take off with their gifts?
I have a step by step plan for you. So, first, examine your gifts. You can ask yourself, what are they? What are those gifts? What fires you up? What gets you excited? The next step is to ask yourself, what can I do with these gifts? How are these gifts growing me? Um, how can I use the skills I'm building to help others or to build something that you've never even thought of building? So you can make a list of the big and the little things you can complete by using that gift. Step 3 is to um, learn what the first step is for you. So, what do you need to first start momentum? Just figuring out that first step. And the next is to act. The Bible says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them?" God calls us to act. So, once you've identified the first step, do it. It doesn't even need to be a big action, it can be really little. But once you do it, you can go to step 5. And that's where you learn from doing a little bit, and then you can do a little bit more, and then you learn from doing a little bit more. And so you can do more and learn more. And so it starts that upward climb of growth, and you can take it one baby step at a time, and you don't have to have all the steps laid out in front of you because you're learning from doing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And so, when you're doing what, how do you stay motivated when you're climbing upwards and it doesn't seem like you're really going anywhere?
I can relate to that a lot. It it can feel almost as though you're backtracking. You might take a few steps forward and then something happens and now you're at the bottom again, but you've learned from climbing up, and so now you know the next 3 steps. So, remember why you're passionate about whatever gift or gifts you've chosen to use. I found it helpful to write it down somewhere, the message that you want to deliver, what you want to do with your gift. And it's also helpful to memorize a Bible verse that inspires you to keep going, something that reminds you that you have the strength to keep going, and to know that the work you're doing while young is transforming the future you'll have is very important, because it is work. You are young, but it is definitely work that you're putting in.
Yeah, it's really true. And like you said about, going back to the bottom again, I've found that in my own journey as a writer. It's something I really love to make into a career. I'm not sure if that will happen. I'm doing everything that I can to make that as easy of a career path as possible. But lately, after moving, and now we're moving again, 200 miles both times. which is a lot, especially when you have a family of 7 like I do. And writing just got pushed to the side behind having a job, having an internship besides that, and also school, everything else I want to do. And so I now find myself struggling for motivation. And, I have all the knowledge. I just have to work my way back up to having a consistent routine, a consistent style. But because I spent so much time just learning, I have a really good path forward if once I am in a position to start in that process again. And yeah, just because I've done it for so long, because I've studied it for so long, I have so much better of a route forward.
Yeah.
So, what's your number one point that you want listeners to remember from this conversation?
I couldn't decide between one point, and so I have like 3. The main one I want you to take away is if you're not failing, then it's a sign you're failing. And that's an important topic to cover because failing is not a bad thing. You're learning from making mistakes. Instead of letting those get you down, you have to realize that they're pushing you towards something else. And now you know how to get over that next step. I also want listeners to remember that God has given them exactly what they need to share the gospel and to find purpose in life. You're not underqualified. You're not too shy or too loud, and you're definitely not too young.
Thank you so much, Emma. Where can we find more about you?
With writing related work, I have a blog and a newsletter that focuses on writing tips and tricks, creating unique characters, my favorite topic, and I share my own writing projects there too. So you can find a link to Shattered Stories somewhere. I assume that I will be able to put link on this.
Yeah, in the description.
All right, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your thoughts. We'll have you on again someday.
All right, awesome. This was very fun. Thank you.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or rate the show wherever you're listening from. You can follow us on social media at warriorcreator.co or by clicking the link in the description. Stay brave, be bold. We'll see you next month.